Hi, I'm Manda McKay. I'm a professional artist, and I'm making these videos of creativity tips to help you enhance your creativity and become a more creative person. And these tips are meant to help everybody regardless of your level of expertise. One thing that I talk about in many of these videos is the importance of having some kind of a prompt, basically, to come up with creative ideas, something that will get you thinking in a different way than you probably would normally. So the prompt that I have for today is to think about creating something from someone else's point of view, and preferably somebody with a very different point of view than you have. So, and it can be the opposite point of view even. And I will give you an example of what I did with my own work. I'm predominantly an oil painter, and I paint still lifes of assembled natural objects. And I'm definitely a feminist, and so my paintings, they're actually allegorical still lifes, and they are definitely from a feminist point of view. So a few years ago, I was thinking about, well, what about the opposite point of view? What about somebody who thinks that women are inferior and that we should be oppressed and that we should be submissive and not have any kind of ideas or lives of our own? So, so I gave that some thought. Now, obviously, I didn't think I was going to paint anything that would actually show women as being inferior. But I did give it some thought just as a prompt for my creativity. And one thing that I came up with is a title for a series of paintings that I worked on. And the title is The Delicate Flower of Womanhood. I was thinking that somebody who thought that women were inferior, that the delicate flower of womanhood, I thought that that spoke to both women being helpless and flower making it seem like only a young woman or a woman in the prime of her life is important. So this is something from the opposite point of view of mine. I use that as a title, The Delicate Flower of Womanhood, in a sarcastic way. And instead of painting a flower in a way that looked delicate, I was painting the flowers in a way that looked more fierce by pairing them with different objects, different other natural objects that were more, like spiky, more, not just something delicate and flimsy and helpless. So I think the series turned out really well. I know I sold a few of the paintings that I did early on, and so using this opposite point of view was a really good jumping off point, even though, like I said, I didn't wind up actually betraying my own point of view. Like I said, it led to something that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise if I hadn't been thinking of, well, what do other people think about this topic? And in that case, it would have been women. What do they think of women? So, so this is something that I would like for you to try thinking about. What would somebody with the opposite point of view of yours, or just a very different point of view, it might not be an opposite, but somebody with a very different point of view, what would they create? And then is this something that you can somehow use yourself as a jumping off point, or even in a sarcastic manner, sort of as I did? An example would be like if you're a vegan, well then a completely different point of view would be somebody who is a hardcore carnivore. Now, obviously, I'm not saying to give up on your principles, so I'm not saying if you're a vegan and you like to cook and that's your creative hobby, obviously I'm not saying that you would create something that was made out of meat. But what if you did? What would that look like? And is this something that could inspire you to make something that's vegan, but that really would look or taste like meat? Of course, a lot of vegans do this anyway. There are a lot of meat substitutes. So I'm just using this as an example. But what's some kind of a creative dish you could come up with that would maybe be doing something different than what you could just buy in a store or what you've already done, whether or not you actually create that dish? And then if you are the person who's the hardcore carnivore, well, what if you made a vegan dish of some sort? And maybe you never actually do this. Maybe that's something that you don't really, you want to practice cooking, but you just don't want to go that far to go into something vegan. But just thinking about this, what if you were, or what if you were going to cook something for a person who is vegan? What would that look like and taste like? What would you do differently? And maybe you only come up with terrible ideas by thinking of someone else's point of view. Maybe it's a jumping off point to other ideas. Maybe you even come up with something that you think is a good idea, and for whatever reason, you're just not going to actually execute that idea and do something with it. But just thinking about something, just thinking about new ideas and practicing coming up with new ideas is something that's really going to help enhance your creativity. I always say in probably half of these videos I make that creativity is something that you get better at the more that you work at it. And I'm not just talking about, if you're a painter, paint and you get better at painting, but I mean actually coming up with the ideas that you would use, that you would depict in a painting. Or, like I said, if you were wanting to be a chef or wanting to cook more, the ideas for the next dish that you're going to create. So give it a try and think about, well, first of all, what is your own point of view regarding something having to do with your creative practice? And then what would a very different point of view, or even the opposite point of view, what would that look like? And then see what you can come up with. And it really can be a great jumping off point. It really can take you in a direction that you wouldn't have come up with otherwise. Well, let me know in the comments, did you find this video to be useful? I hope so. Have you ever done this, or have you tried this now that you've seen this video of coming up, just thinking about something from a completely different point of view? And how does that make you feel? And what kind of ideas do you come up with? So let me know in the comments, and I hope you like this video. Again, my name is Manda McKay, and thank you so much for watching.